So very recently, I decided to start reading this book called How to Read and Why by Harold Bloom. And if you don't know who Harold Bloom is, he was a really famous literary critic of the 20th century. He was very prolific in his own right. He had written and published many different volumes of various literary criticisms, this being one of them. Basically, in this book is breaking down different types of literature in different sections and writing essays on different works or different authors within those sections. So the first section was the short story section, and he wrote about various different authors, primarily Ivan Turgenev, Anton Chekhov, Flannery O'Connor, Borges, who else? Nikolai Gogol. Did I already say Turgenev? Yes, I did. Along with a few other people, he mentions Kafka, but he doesn't write specifically about him. Guy de Maupassant, and Ernest Hemingway. I think I've gotten them all. Oh, and Vladimir Nabokov. So he writes about a lot of different people. As I started reading this book, I was thinking, oh my gosh, it would be so fun to actually read everything that he mentions as I read this or after I read this. So that's what I started doing, and partway through doing that, I'm like, this would be a really great opportunity to vlog. So that's what this is. This is going to be a reading vlog of me reading all the different short stories that Harold Bloom mentions in this book. So I've already started, as I've said. I've totally already started. I'm so sorry. But I started with Anton Chekhov because I had a few of his stories available here, because all my books were kind of all over the place at my mom's house or here. So kind of all over the place. And I did end up buying a few that he mentioned that I didn't already own. So we started with Chekhov, where I read, how did we do this? I read The Lady with the Little Dog, The Student, and then The Kiss. So I read those three stories. I also ended up reading a play of his, but we don't need to mention that here. And I just freaking loved the stories that I read by Anton Chekhov. Absolutely so much. I mean, he is a realist author. He's a Russian author writing at the end of like the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, but primarily at the end of the 1800s. And he just seems like such a kind soul. I don't know. I absolutely loved his stories and his play that I read. He writes a lot about like missed opportunities, I guess you could say, in life. And I feel like as you're reading his stories, you can tell that he's absolutely felt deep sadness and pain in his life, but then he also knows what real simple happiness is, like true sublime simple happiness is. I feel like that really comes through in his stories and in his plays. His stories. We're talking about stories here. So happy to read Chekhov. After that, I moved on to Ivan Turgenev for his Sketches from a Hunter's Album, which is what Harold Bloom mentioned in that book. I'd previously read First Love by Ivan Turgenev a few years ago, which is a little novella, which I liked. I gave it 4 stars. Didn't change my life, but I liked it. And Turgenev is basically in this collection of short stories. All of his stories are trying to support his belief that we should get rid of serfdom, or that they should get rid of serfdom in Russia at the time. So all of his stories kind of are about that in one way or another. So I read Bezin, which was about our main character, I guess you could say, the character we were hearing from, going on a hunting trip. He gets stuck out late at night, so he has to stay out because he gets lost, and he finds a bunch of really young boys sitting around a fire, tending horses, telling stories about different fables or different beliefs that people have around them. And we see the difference in class. So we have our hunter, who is from a higher class, and then our boys tending these horses who are not from the same class. It was just really interesting to see the stories that these boys were telling and the way that our narrator was listening and understanding and interpreting what was going on. So that was an interesting story for sure. And then I read Cassian from the Beautiful Lands, which was about this same situation. This guy of nobility on a hunting trip runs into this other guy who is a peasant. See the dynamic there. These were great stories. These are the ones that I think Harold Bloom, a lot of people said that this was the best short story collection ever penned. I didn't love this as much as Chekhov, but I did really like it. And Turgenev is definitely a very skilled writer. I definitely felt the atmosphere of the stories that he was writing. It felt very chilling. So that was very good. But Chekhov, elite, okay? Super freaking elite. After that, what did I pick up? After that, I picked up the story that he mentioned by Vladimir Nabokov. So he mentioned the Vane sisters. So I read that one, and I have to say I didn't love Nabokov's writing. And I'd never read anything by Vladimir Nabokov before. He's the author who wrote Lolita, who I just like have no idea if I want to read that book ever in my life, but there you go. This is my first thing by Nabokov. And I felt like, sure, he's a beautiful writer, but it felt like he was trying too hard with the language that he was using, and it just felt unnecessary to me. And I just didn't really get anything out of that story. It's about it's about our main narrator, who's a guy who has this like passive kind of relationship with this one woman, not romantic in any way, and she's talking to him about he's remembering being a teacher for this woman's younger sister who unalived herself right after a big test because of some relationship that she had with this man, and all of that. That's kind of like what's going on in that story. And I just personally didn't get anything out of this, and I did not connect with Nabokov's writing, but I would like to try a couple of his other stories, which is why I did mark up a couple other stories in the green, just to see, because I have that whole collection, and honestly, you never know. But yes, after that, I picked up, these were not the stories that he mentioned, but I picked up this little collection of Jorge Luis Borges's The Book of Sand in Shakespeare's Memory, because it was slim, and I saw it, I got it half off, whatever. So I read the first half of this, which was the entirety of the Book of Sand, so everything highlighted in green. And I have to say, unfortunately, I didn't connect with Borges's writing fully either. The ones that I have marked with a black dot next to them, I really liked and would probably like to go back to. So The Mirror and the Mask, A Wary Man's Utopia, The Disc, and The Book of Sand. So he's writing very whimsical, I guess you could say magical realism stories. And I do really like kind of the main thesis takeaway of the stories that I tabbed, that I just mentioned in a lot of them. But what I didn't like about Borges was that he seemed like he was trying to convince you that he was smart. Because, that's probably like a totally unfair assessment. I know that he's like an extremely influential, well-beloved author who's changed literature. So I'm totally aware there's a lot that like I just probably don't get. But I wonder if I just don't feel initially pulled to learn that stuff, if that makes sense, because I don't feel like I connect with the writing, at least even on a surface level at all. But again, I did like those specific stories that I mentioned. But I felt like all he was doing in most of his stories was like name dropping books and authors. And I feel like, okay, if your whole story is you just like name dropping and trying to name dropping authors and like things that you've read or whatever, I just feel like that's totally taking away, like, what are you saying though? Like, that's taking away from the opportunity for you to create your own story and art, as opposed to just constantly making these references, constantly. So that bugged me. But again, that's Borges. Like I said, haven't read the specific stories that Harold Bloom mentioned in his book yet, but I have tabbed them in this big collection that I have, which is his collected fictions. So I'm definitely going to do that. after that, I just realized I've read so many. I'm also filming this introduction like at the end of, I'm filming this introduction out of order, okay, of when I've already filmed some of this video. But I did read Guy de Maupassant, so this was another author that Bloom mentioned. So I read The Orla and A Parisian Affair and A Woman's Confession. I think I mentioned The Necklace in the last video that I hauled this book in, but he didn't mention The Necklace, so I didn't end up reading that just because I wanted to read through the stories that were mentioned in the book first. But I will go back and read The Necklace for sure. I don't know why I thought that that was one of the stories that he mentioned. I like these. They were entertaining. They were good. I really liked the Guy de Maupassant stories. A Parisian Affair was great. A Woman's Confession, I loved the little twist at the end for sure. That was fantastic. And The Orla, which Harold Bloom said was one of the most horrific, like true horror stories, short stories that he's ever read, which is supposed to be, or so people think, is supposed to be a story, like an allegory of, or a metaphor for syphilis, because Guy de Maupassant, I believe, did he die of syphilis? I didn't know that. I'm just trying to remember what Harold Bloom said. He definitely had it and kind of like lost his mind at the end, so it's supposed to be a story, like an allegory of losing your mind, and not being in control and not knowing what's going on. Yeah, or at least that's what Harold Bloom thinks and a lot of people think. And then last but not least, before we move on to all the other things that I read going forward in this vlog, I read Nikolai Gogol, which is my first time reading Gogol, which is super exciting. I love this edition so much. But I read 3 stories from here. So The Diary of a Madman, which I loved, The Nose, which was great, and The Overcoat, which was so sad. And I just filmed a video of my mid-year book freakout tag, and one of the questions was favorite new character of the year so far, and I mentioned a character from a different book that I'd read. But now that I'm remembering this, I wish I mentioned the character from The Overcoat, because he was another character that I can't say I necessarily remember the name of, but he just inspired so much sympathy in me, and I felt so bad about his life and like what happened to him. It made me so sad, The Overcoat. So freaking sad, man. Yeah. But Nikolai Gogol he wrote kind of like weird and ridiculous things. Like The Diary of a Madman was truly the story of like a guy losing his mind, and it was crazy and funny, I guess. The Nose, wild. It's a story about this guy who wakes up one day and like doesn't have a nose on his face, and then he like sees his actual nose walking around like in human size. I don't know, it's hard to picture it, but yeah, and he's like trying to get his nose back. So that was crazy. But yeah, so those are the short stories that I've read so far, and I'm excited to go forth and show you what I've been thinking of all the other short fictions that Harold Bloom has mentioned. Sorry if you hear construction outside. There's cars doing tree cutting situations, I think. I'm not sure. We are on Flannery O'Connor. We are on Flannery O'Connor. I have this beautiful, ooh, they're just so beautifully published, her books, when you get them in these editions. I'm just obsessed. I'm just already obsessed with Flannery O'Connor. Like, I cannot even. We're on her stories, the ones that were referenced in Harold Bloom's How to Read and Why, of course, because that's the whole point of this video. I've already read 2 of them. I'm partway through the 3rd one, and then there's 1 more left. So of the ones that he's mentioned, the first one in this collection that he mentioned was A Good Man is Hard to Find, which I'd never read before. So this is my first intro to Flannery O'Connor, and can you tell I love her writing? Oh my god, okay. And then the second story was Good Country People. And then the 3rd story is A View of the Woods. I don't know why I feel the need to show you can't even see, but I just feel the need to go like that. Okay. A View of the Woods. And then the fourth one that I will read hopefully today, today, is Parker's Back. This woman is such a fabulous writer. I am just obsessed. She writes the Southern Gothic. Okay, she was born, I think, in like 1920 something. She died at the age of 39. So I think that these books or these short stories probably put us at like 1940s, maybe 1950s. Probably like 1950s. Yeah, because it was the 1940s. Yeah, 1940s, 1950s. I'm not sure. A Good Man Is Hard to Find was so good. I mean, it was creepy too. But really, the one that was super creepy was Good Country People. That was creepy. That was really creepy. Again, like I said, she writes the Southern Gothic, and boy, does she do it well. I feel like she's writing like kind of Catholic, well, definitely Catholic because she was Catholic, religious toned, she's like a huge moralizer, but it's like creepy, man. If you want to read books and just feel like something bad is going to happen, I just know it. Like something really bad is building to happen, and then it happens at the end, at least of both of the first two stories that I read. They're so good, and she is so good at building characters, so good at building like unique character personalities, and she just has to describe them briefly, and boy, do you get exactly what these characters are like, and they're so unique and particular people. She's just so skilled, and I'm gonna digress a little bit. Something that I've been loving about doing this little short story reading project is that it's giving me the opportunity to taste test so many different authors that maybe I hadn't read before. And the art of the short story, I've never previously appreciated it so much. I really haven't. And you know what? That's fine. It's coming to me at this time in my life. And I really it's an art. It is an art to really pull off a good, well-rounded short story. And I'm so excited to get to the Hemingway books because I swear at my mom's house I have the complete works of Hemingway short stories. I know I did have it at least at one point. I seriously hope I did not get rid of it because your girl was getting rid of a lot of stuff when I was moving. I don't know why. And like I said in my last video, guys, keep your freaking books. Unless you've read it before, then like I'm all about getting rid of things that you don't like. Now at least, because I'm like kind of a little bit of a collector hoarder when it comes to books at least. But seriously, keep your books if you haven't read them yet. Because I'm gonna be so mad at myself if I got rid of that. I'm just all over the place because I just love Flannery O'Connor. She's so good. She's so good. And specifically in A Good Man Is Hard to Find, that was a good short story. I see why she's most famous for it, I think. And something that Harold Bloom pointed out in his essay section about Flannery O'Connor was this line at the end of the story. And I'll read it to you in a second. But as I was reading this story and this line came up at the end, it really struck me how powerful actually this line totally is. So I totally recommend reading this story if you haven't yet. But the line is, "She would have been a good woman," the misfit said, "if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life." They're so good. She's just like she's just truly, in my opinion, a master at like building a full story that totally sucks you in, and that's unique. I feel like for me in this short story reading project, Chekhov and Flannery O'Connor have done that in very different ways, but like I feel like I'm reading a whole whole story. I was gonna say, like, I'm totally sucked into the story. For each of the ones that I've read so far, for each of these three, I'm sucked into A View from the Woods, or A View of the Woods already. You're just like sucked in immediately. She just builds the whole atmosphere instantly, and the characters are so real and lifelike, and she's so good. So big huge fan of Flannery O'Connor. So impressed by that, and that's what's up. I guess I'll let you know when I finish A View from the Woods. I'm not really sure how much to tell you about each of these stories because they're short stories. They're like 20 pages each. You know, I don't really want to spoil them. But I guess A View of the Woods. So in this one, we're following a family in Georgia. I'm assuming it's in Georgia. And we have an old man, and it starts with an old man and his young granddaughter. And the granddaughter is like, basically reminds this old man exactly of himself because she looks just like him. She has the same personality, give or take a few minor details. And so he loves his granddaughter. And she is the daughter of his daughter, who is married to a guy named Pitts, who he hates and totally does not respect. And they have 7 kids. And the granddaughter, Mary, is the 7th child, the youngest kid of all the kids. And again, so many biblical allusions in her stories. Yeah, the grandfather is super into like anything that he can do for progress and like making money, and he wants to make sure he can give a lot of money, and everything that he has is going to go to his granddaughter Mary. And her dad, Pitts, hates her and like abuses her because of the love, or because of how much the grandfather likes her. And this family lives on the grandfather's property, and he's like, I'm gonna make sure they don't pay for anything because they're gonna use that against me, and I want to be in charge, kind of a thing. But he doesn't like them and doesn't respect them, but only likes the granddaughter. And so there's all these different layers to it, and he wants to sell this piece of land, and everybody's kind of upset. I don't know, that's the setup. And you're instantly in it. You are instantly in it. So as with all of the stories, you're instantly in it. And good country people, like I said, it was creepy. Like, actually one of the creepiest stories I've ever read. Like, it was just building up. I was just like tense and uncomfortable the whole time. And then the end, I'm like, oh my god, that's how it ends? Creepy. Like, it's just creepy. And I was telling my boyfriend about it. I'm like, this is just crazy. I can't believe this is how it ends. It's just crazy. But like, and just like mean and evil and creepy. Oh my god. Anyway, that's what's up. Guys, so we are here. We are back. It is a different day, actually. I didn't end up updating you the day that I finished the Flannery O'Connor stories. So let me walk you through what happened in life and in the reading world. It's just been like crazy. Seriously, the past 2 months have been, I feel like I've lived a whole year a whole 5 years in the past 2 months, but even before that it was crazy. Anyway, let's talk. So I finished the Flannery O'Connor stories, which were so outstanding. I can't. Like, my love for Flannery O'Connor is insane. Like, I would say just reading these 4 short stories of hers that I read. So the last one that I was reading when I updated you was A View of the Woods. And then after that I started reading Parker's Back. So even just reading 4 of her short stories. So again, A Good Man Is Hard to Find, Good Country People, and the 2 that I just mentioned. I would totally consider, like, I really want to say that Flannery O'Connor is one of my favorite authors of all time. Like, she's there with, like, George Eliot, Virginia Woolf, Kurt Vonnegut, lots of people that I love that I can't think of again at the moment, but she's there. I also want to put Chekhov up there too, but like, she's really there for me, you know? Chekhov, again, really darn close. I don't know. Oh my goodness. So really pleased. A View of the Woods, like, it's creepy. Like, it ends so hauntingly and creepily, all of her books, and it's just like a punch in the face and the gut about humanity and about good and evil and about the dark side of humans. Oh my goodness. And then Parker's Back was so good. Like, basically that one was about this guy who has a bunch of tattoos, essentially, like all over his body. He's really into tattoos. He's married to this woman who is super religious, and he's the whole time like, I don't know why I married this woman. Like, I really hate her. She's awful. Why did I do this? And yada, yada, yada. He ends up essentially getting another tattoo because he feels like he wants a tattoo of Christ on his back, where he has no other tattoos. Like, he's tattooed all on the front. He wants something on his back for his wife. Like, he wants to, I don't know, be saved or something. And he doesn't say that, but like, it's implied, I think, at the end. And that one was a really big, obvious, I feel like, moral and spiritual story. Like, you can tell what the motive behind that story was so easy. I mean, with all of them, I feel like you could tell so easily, but like, really so easily with that one. Boy, I just think she's so good. So anyways, read those a million bajillion, 5,000 million stars for all of them. And then after that, I went and I picked up, because I had ordered this through Barnes & Noble, and they called me to tell me it was ready, so I went to go pick it up. And this is Stella Adler on Ibsen, Strindberg, and Chekhov. Basically, I'd never heard of Stella Adler, but I saw this online. She was a really famous acting coach in the golden age of Hollywood, or during the golden age of Hollywood, I believe. An original member of the famed group theater, Stella Adler was one of the most influential artists to come out of the American theater. Trained Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro in the art of script interpretation. So she is writing all about these different playwrights and what their stories mean, and that's kind of what I understand. And because I'm so into the Harold Bloom book, which is the whole reason that I'm reading all these short stories, and then I picked up Chekhov's The Seagull, and I have Ibsen plays, I have Strindberg plays. I'm like, whoa, this is and the Chekhov plays that she's writing about in these. I have all these plays. I'm like, I need that book, because I just love this breakdown and this, not necessarily criticism, but essays and interpretations on these works. I just think that it's such an enriching experience to read these people's thoughts on these works, of course. So that's why I went and I picked this up. And then I'd also heard of, and I was glad they had this in stock, this. So this is a New York Review of Books edition by Simone Weil and Rachel Bespaloff, and it's called War and the Iliad. It's really slim, and it's a volume of 2 collected essays by each respective author there, or writer there. I'd never heard of Simone Weil or Rachel Bespaloff before, but this, again, like I said, essays on the Iliad, and I think it's comparing it or contrasting it with World War II. I think these essays were both written around the time of World War II. So War and the Iliad is a perfect introduction to the range of Homer's art, as well as a provocative and rewarding demonstration of the links between literature, philosophy, and questions of life and death. First published on the eve of war in 1939, the essay has often been read as a pacifist manifesto. I think they're both French, complex relations between literature, religion, and philosophy, discussion of the Iliad in the midst of World War II, calling it her method of facing the war. Yeah, I mean, I just needed this. I felt like, because I don't think I have it in front of me. Oh my god, I already put it back on my shelf. So just trust me, it's up there. I just finished rereading The Odyssey, the Emily Wilson translation. So obviously that's by Homer. I'm so glad I reread that. I read that when I was like 20 years old, 21. I don't remember, for the first time. God, how old was I? I really don't remember. But I remember liking it, but I mean, I was due for a reread. I didn't really remember specifically a lot of the story. I obviously know the general idea at the very least, and like all the different main story beats or points in the epic. But I'm so glad I reread the Odyssey, and now I want to go back and reread the Iliad as well. I wish I had the Emily Wilson translation of the Iliad, but I do not. I think it's the Robert Fitzgerald translation of the Iliad. It's an Oxford World Classics edition. I don't know where it is. It's probably on the shelf already. I don't know. Amid this chaos, but I loved rereading the Odyssey. I loved the Odyssey. It was so funny, actually, to me, reading it this second time around. I just felt like it was a bunch of guys just like, look at how fast I am. Like, I'm better than you. Like, I can run faster than you. Like, I'm cool. Let me give you all these gifts because, like, it makes me look good. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was so funny. Obviously, it's not, that's a gross oversimplification of what the Odyssey is, but that's just something that I noticed this time around reading it. And I love the Emily Wilson translation because it's so readable. It's so readable, but it still retains that, you're probably gonna hear the air conditioning come on, I'm sorry. It still retains that verse narrative structure. The Robert Fitzgerald, I'm sorry if the air is so loud, but I'm gonna keep talking. The Robert Fitzgerald translation of the Iliad, I remembered feeling like it was definitely more poetic and a little bit more dense to get through. But yeah, so anyways, I wanted to get this to have for, I don't know, after I read the Iliad or maybe before. But anyway, so I moved on back to my short story project. Oh, after I picked those books up that day, we went to a wedding, which we had to drive to, and I wanted to take my camera with me, but I just completely forgot to bring it with me to like vlog a little bit of it. But then after the wedding, or during the wedding, and then like the night of the wedding when we got back to the hotel, oh my god, I got so sick. And today's the next day, and I am like, so I have medicine, so I'm okay, but like I was so sick. So anyway, that happened, and we had to like drive home and then drop my sister off at my mom's house. But I ended up stopping at my mom's house and picking up like a little bag full of books that I wanted because, you know, priorities. I needed to hold my cat, pick some stuff up from my mom's house, and I grabbed a little bag of books. But yeah, and then today I started the next book, or the next short story collection. This is what Harold Bloom is calling it, a short story collection for the short story reading project that we're doing. So that's Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. I love Calvino's editions, like these white, beautiful editions. I have a couple of them. I've read The Cloven Viscount by Italo Calvino like 3 years ago now, and I didn't love it. I have to say I didn't love it, but I am curious again to pick this up. So again, Invisible Cities is, Harold Bloom is calling it a collection of short stories. It's kind of that, but kind of a continuous narrative. It reads very vignette-y, very poetic, and it's essentially about Marco Polo, or it's Italo Calvino imagining a conversation between Kublai Khan and Marco Polo. And Kublai Khan's this like great emperor, and then Marco Polo's out adventuring and exploring the world and all the new territories in the empire of Kublai Khan for him. And so we're getting all these different descriptions of all the different cities that Marco Polo finds. And it's super magical, whimsical. You can glean lots of philosophical insight from some of the descriptions of these cities. I think this honestly reads more like a little vignette-y volume of philosophy to me than it does fiction. But, I mean, same. It's both, I guess, kind of. It is fiction, so there you go. Yeah, I'm liking it so far. I'm definitely not loving this, meaning I'm not connecting with it that much. And I wonder if I'm more into, which maybe it's like totally not fair to compare, but maybe I'm more into the realism writing. Like Chekhov, very realist. Flannery O'Connor, very realist. And this is much more like magical realist, because I also started reading, I didn't bring it up here with me, the Borges stories. Like I don't know if I mentioned that yet. And I didn't love them either. Again, I liked some of them. I'm sure I missed a lot of the points of it, because I know Borges is an extremely complicated writer, so I'm positive I missed a lot of like the points and the artistry of it, but it didn't speak to me. It didn't like call to me to dig further into them, if I'm being honest. And I think Italo Calvino, the same thing's happening here. But again, I am enjoying it. I do like it. I just don't love it. I'm gonna keep reading it, of course. And it's an interesting experience. I love this reading project of getting these taste tests of all these different types of authors and different writing styles. I think it's so fun and interesting. Kitchen. I just got back from sitting by the pool. That's why I'm in my bathing suit. And I am making pasta salad, because what is a more summery meal? I can't think of one. Pasta salad. I'm also eating watermelon that I just got today. So good. Finished Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino last night, and I'm sorry to say that my enjoyment of it I did not enjoy this book anymore as I continued to read it, unfortunately. I think that it's very artistic. I just have the same feelings about it that I had when I updated you the last time, when I was like partway through reading it. I think it's more of a philosophical vignette kind of a reading experience, very poetic, very artsy, very artistic. Calvino had an idea and he really created a beautiful piece of art. So it doesn't read like, in my opinion, it doesn't read like short stories, but I guess you could say it does. And it doesn't read to me like a cohesive novel, except there are interspersed throughout moments where you hear from Kubla Khan, who's talking to Marco Polo, that kind of brings all these ideas and these cities together. So that's kind of the through piece. But either way, I mean, I read it. I liked it. There were some lines throughout that I really enjoyed. I guess I'll read this last one that I just pulled up. The inferno of the living is not something that will be if there is one. The inferno of the living is not something that will be. If there is one, it is what is already here, the inferno where we live every day, that we form by being together. There are two ways to escape suffering it. The first is easy for many. Accept the inferno and become such a part of it that you can no longer see it. The second is risky and demands constant vigilance and apprehension. Seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of the inferno are not inferno, and then make them endure, give them space. So it is really beautiful. I just can't say that I loved it so much and was like super sucked into it and really getting so much out of it. But there were really beautiful moments of philosophy like that throughout. So I appreciated it. I gave it 3 stars. And then I think I showed when I was sitting by the pool, I actually picked up and finished reading all of the Hemingway short stories that were mentioned in Harold Bloom's. The first one and the longest one was The Snows of Kilimanjaro. It was about 20-ish pages, 15 to 20 pages, I don't remember. Thought this was really beautiful. I do really like Hemingway's writing. I can't say that compared to Chekhov for me in this reading experiment and Flannery O'Connor, Hemingway is definitely beneath them, but he is still just a really excellent writer and thinker, and he's an excellent artist at the stories that he's creating. He really makes you think about what he wants you to think about, if that makes sense, about relationships between men and women, relationships that we have with ourselves and our lives and the experiences that we have. But The Snows of Kilimanjaro was kind of about this man who was basically dying of a wound. Was it gangrene? And the dialogue that he was having with the woman that he was with at the time, and he was thinking about all of the things. I'm putting cherries in this bowl, by the way. All of the things that he wanted to do in his life, specifically all the stories that he wanted to write, that he's now not getting, the opportunity to write because he believes he is dying. And he's talking about the relationship that he has with this woman. I really liked it. The second story that I read was The End of Something, which very similar about the relationship between a man and a woman, and the feelings that the man has or does not have for the woman. That's very simplified, but anyways, that was that one. It's a super short story. It was like 4 pages, maybe 3. And then Hills Like White Elephants, same kind of ideas being talked about there. Is also a very short story. And then The Sea Change, oh wait, that was the last one. God Rest You Merry Gentlemen was very short, as was The Sea Change, super short. And those two were definitely my favorite. Definitely my favorite. God Rest You Merry Gentlemen was about this, I can't tell you what they're about because they're such short stories, you really just have to read them. It starts with a few doctors having a conversation with each other, and then someone comes in and is asking for help about something very specific. So that was God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. And then A Sea Change was another one about a man and a woman having a conversation with each other, talking about their relationship, essentially. So you can see that that's definitely like a major theme that Hemingway was grappling with. Yeah, so very happy to read Hemingway. Again, I'm putting him, is he in 3rd or 4th place? I'm gonna say he's tied with Turgenev for short stories in my enjoyment of them and what I've gotten out of them. I'd say he's tied with Turgenev as of right now, but definitely beneath Flannery O'Connor and Chekhov. I'm gonna keep making my pasta salad. I don't know what I'm gonna start next. I might do the rest of the Borges stories. That's probably what I'll do actually, because I have those left to read. Yeah, and then I'm done. Now a couple of days later, actually, and I must admit I have not read any more of the Jorge Luis Borges, the Borges short stories. I think that, you know, reading from my Penguin Classics edition, the Shakespeare's Memory, and I forgot the name, the Book of Sand and Shakespeare's Memory, reading the whole section of the Book of Sand and not like being, I just wasn't compelled to want to read so much more so immediately. So anyways, that's why it's been a couple days and I haven't picked any more up and I feel bad about it, but I will get back to it, absolutely. I'm just gearing myself up for it. But I do have more, I do have some reading updates that relates to this video. So this was the last book that I finished. After that, I did decide to pick up this. So this is Marco Polo's The Travels, because I've owned this for maybe like 2 years now, maybe, yeah, 2.5, 2 years now, and I never picked it up. And honestly, this is this, but like a fictional version, which was really crazy, you know? So this book is about, Italo Calvino is imagining a conversation or many conversations between Kublai Khan and Marco Polo. And it's all about the great Khan, you know, having Marco Polo go out and explore all these different cities that are now under his reign and in his empire, and he wants to hear about them and what are they like? Tell me all about them, basically. And Marco Polo is relaying these fantastic, very fabulous tales of all these different various cities that he goes and visits that are obviously fantastical in this context. And I believe, you know, it's a commentary on ownership or empire and not actually knowing something really unless, just because you own it doesn't mean that you own it. A commentary on the inability to fully understand something without actually being there and being in it. It exemplifies the limits of one's knowledge, the limits of knowledge, the limits of something that you can understand. It's interesting too in this book, discussions of language and Marco Polo being able to understand multiple different languages. But I feel like with the descriptions that he has of the city, he's exemplifying how language is slippery and understanding in general is slippery, and like I was saying, ownership and empire. It's a huge comment on that. I guess me not being fully aware, I guess it was just very enriching, and it's been so far because I've only read a few pages of it, but it's extremely enriching to pick this up, The Travels by Marco Polo, which is a nonfiction account of Marco Polo talking about, or I think he's recounting his travels to someone else and someone else wrote it down, but basically talking about his life and all the different places that he's been and explaining what each different city and place that he's visiting is like, exactly like what this is, which is such an interesting parallel to read these back to back. Also, the little prologue section that I read was such a fun, I loved it. I loved reading the prologue because it was Marco Polo explaining to whoever is writing this down, so he's dictating to whoever is writing this down what his relationship was like with Kublai Khan in real life. So I highlighted it and I'll read it out to you. It said, "The lad fulfilled his mission well and wisely. He had seen and heard more than once when emissaries whom the Khan had dispatched to various parts of the world returned to him and rendered an account of the mission on which they had been sent out, but could give no other report on the countries they had visited, how their master would call them dolts and dunces, and declare that he would rather hear reports of these strange countries and of their customs and usages than the business on which he had sent them. When Marco went on his mission, being well aware of this, he paid close attention to all the novelties and curiosities that came his way, so that he might retail them to the great Khan. On his return, he presented himself before the Khan and first gave a full account of the business on which he had been sent. He had accomplished it very well. Then he went on to recount all the remarkable things he had seen on the way, so well and shrewdly that the Khan and all those who heard him were amazed, and said to one another, 'If this youth lives to manhood, he cannot fail to prove himself a man of sound judgment and true worth.'" And then I skip a section, but what need to make a long story of it? You may take it for a fact that Messer Marco stayed with the great Khan fully 17 years, and in all this time he never ceased to travel on special missions. For the great Khan, seeing that Messer Marco brought him such news from every country and conducted so successfully all the business on which he was sent, used to entrust him with all the most interesting and distant missions. He continued to conduct his business with great success, and to bring back word of many novelties and curiosities. And the great Khan was so well satisfied with his conduct of affairs that he held him in high esteem and showed him such favor, and kept him so near his own person that the other lords were moved to envy. This then is how it came about that Messer Marco observed more of the peculiarities of this part of the world than any other man, because he traveled more widely in these outlandish regions than any man who was ever born, and also because he gave his mind more intently to observing them. So I just feel like it's really a special thing not only to do this Harold Bloom reading project, but to read things to pick up books that are informed by something that you read previously anyway. So like this reminded me that I own this, and now I'm reading them together, and I feel like they should be read together. Does that make sense? So I'm just really excited about that. I just think it's so much fun. Something else, side note, that this book was making me think about, and it made me kind of melancholy, kind of sad-ish, was that so we hear first about Marco Polo's dad and how that, and that leads to then Marco Polo being brought into this whole situation with the Khan and how his life turned out to be the way that it did. They travel places, and it takes them like 3 years to travel places, and then they go on to do one task, and then they stay there for like a year before they come back and can finish the task. And it just makes me think about two different things, like how much life goes by in just waiting to do something else, but also too how, I don't want to say it just makes me feel like how slow accomplishment must be, but then the point is not necessarily accomplishment in life, it's to be present in the moment of life, so so it's making me think about all those different things. Imagine in present day if it took us 20 years or 17 years to complete a journey or a mission. Like, you would feel so aggravated. And like one thing, like I must travel this far to relay this message to this person and collect this oil to bring back to my emperor. And it's taking me 3 years to get this way, and then I'm stuck here because I can't go this way because he's waiting for a new pope to be elected. And that took like 5 years or something, and then or 2 years. And then by the time he leaves, he makes it so far, and then a new pope is elected, and he's like, gotta go back. So he goes back. I don't know, it makes me feel like, I don't exactly know what it's making me feel like. It's just making me kind of emotional. Like, life goes by so fast. but life really is meant to be lived, you know, in the little moments, like, not even just the little moments that we have, but I don't know. Hopefully somebody gets what I'm trying to say with that. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I'm just expressing feelings, I suppose. But, yeah, I'm happy to be reading. That went nowhere, but I'm happy to be reading this so much in this. But, yeah, I read, in the book that I read in totality the last, like, 2 days, instead of picking up the Borges stories, was this. So this is Classical Literary Criticism, this Penguin Classics edition. I'm glad that I read this, actually. I know this, I don't want this video to like be about this, but I'm really glad that I picked this up. The introduction was super interesting. So we got basically sections from different very influential ancient thinkers like Plato. So we had sections from The Republic, which was so fun to read. I did, when I was younger, read The Republic, but I, again, was like probably 19, 20 years old at the time. And I think I just read it and like let the words glaze over my brain. Like I read it, but I didn't absorb it, if that makes sense, or I didn't really process it. And it was so much fun, which is like, I'm sure we're all guilty of doing that, you know what I mean? But it was so fun to actually read Plato. I'm like, he's fun to read. Like the dialogue is so interesting. And I remembered that from the past, like previously, but I actually was like absorbing it this time. And it's funny to me. It's just funny to hear the way that they think and what they think. Because obviously the Republic is Socrates having this discussions with different people, trying to decide like what should be in their ideal state, like city state. And so then they're talking about all these different form, like things in art, because this is specifically about literary criticism, ancient literary criticism. So they're talking about things and elements that show up like with characters and stories and in art and paintings and stuff like that. And they're like, well, this obviously can't do. So they're very, very pro literary censorship, which is bad, but like it's just funny. It's just funny to me to read it. I don't know why. And then Aristotle's Poetics, which I swear this has like the entirety of the Poetics in it. I think it does, because Aristotle's Poetics I know is a very slim volume. I own it. I want to read the introduction in it now that I've read this, because I'm pretty darn sure I read the whole thing. And even if I didn't, I have no interest in reading the rest of it. I didn't think Aristotle was very interesting, in my opinion. And then it went on to some Roman thinkers. So there was Horace, right? He's Roman. I hope I'm not mistaking that, but Horace, The Art of Poetry, and then Longinus, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, On the Sublime, which On the Sublime is a super interesting read, talking about what makes, like in a very short form, what makes great authors. Like, how do you reach the sublime in art, basically? Like that worthy of the gods kind of a thing. So he broke down different sentences from different famous plays and poems and things, and it was interesting to hear their thoughts about that and what makes a great, like a better sentence and yada yada yada. So that was super interesting. Again, makes me want to read some not Plato. Well, yes, I want to read the whole of the Republic now. I should say, I was gonna say again, but it's probably gonna feel like a first read, honestly, this time. But it makes me want to read Sappho, because Sappho keeps getting like mentioned in things. And I have read Sappho before. I remember thinking it was so beautiful and I loved it. But that was again around the age of like 19, 20, 21 when I was like reading a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Gosh, some of the, like the way he was talking about Sappho too. Also, when people bring up, like in these ancient people bring up like plots of different plays and tragedies or poems, then I'm like, that sounds fascinating. fascinating. And then I Google it. I'm like, where can I get that? And it's like, this is lost. This is believed to have been a part of this. And we get mention to it or reference to it in the Republic or in this something by Longinus, but it doesn't actually exist anymore because it's been lost. And I'm like, great, that sucks because there's so many things that sound so interesting. So that's really frustrating. Anyway, that's what's up. Bring this video to a close, shall we? Okay, it's been actually a couple of weeks. Has it been a couple of weeks or like a week or a week and a half? Time doesn't make any sense to me right now. I think it's been between 1 week and 2 weeks. It's been about a week and a half, peeps. Where in that time I did not bring myself, I just could not bring myself to read any of the Borges stories that, you know, Harold Bloom wrote about in his book, which is the whole point of this video. I struggled, right? No part of me wanted to pick them up. I was eager to pick up other things that I was enjoying, like my Marco Polo, the travels. In the meantime, I read a different book. I read the Iliad, which, oh my God, I read classical literary criticism, which I told you about. I've read a couple essays on the Iliad, the Simone Weil and the Rachel Bespaloff essays. I think I'm pronouncing her name right, I don't know. But I was really enjoying those enriching, beautiful, life-fulfilling reading experiences. And I just kept thinking, Borges just doesn't do it for me. I just feel like I did not care to pick up his works. You know, I'd already read the first half of this book. So the first half of this Penguin Classics edition, which was, gosh, what was it called? The Book of Sand. So all these short stories highlighted in green. I read a lot, so it's not like I didn't give Borges a try. And the reason I read these instead of the stories Harold Bloom mentioned was because I didn't know if I had this then, and I got this, you know, so I just decided to jump in this direction. There are certain people and writers and artists specifically who, I mean, I don't want to get into like a deeper discussion of what is the point of art. There's lots of points to it, but one of the points and most important points of art is that you have someone who's obviously taken the time to deeply sit with a feeling or a thought or an idea and has found a way to illustrate it, demonstrate it, or write it down in a way that elucidates that feeling, that concept for you that you couldn't put into words and you didn't quite know you were experiencing, but they clearly have experienced it in the same way as yourself and have been able to illustrate that back to you like a mirror. And as, you know, we learn from the book of Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun. There are so many people writing so many different versions of the same ideas and feelings in different words, or illustrating them in different paintings and making different movies, you know? And it's a matter of finding the right artists that see the world and speak the same language that your heart and mind is seeing the world in and speaking in. So for me, Borges is not doing that at all. And no shade to him, because I see like there is a lot of big brain energy stuff going on in his stories, and I totally acknowledge that. Perhaps I'm just not grasping everything that he's talking about and saying, but it feels like I'm just like rejecting everything he's trying to say anyway, because he's not saying it in any way that seems attractive to me. Does that make sense? So I don't know. I did sit down with today, and why I'm now working up the courage to film this little exit clip. I did work up the courage to sit down today and try a couple of these stories that I tabbed in this collected fictions edition, of these stories that that Harold Bloom mentioned. So I started with the Aleph. Okay, so I started with the Aleph. I read 2 pages and immediately it was just like, I am just not, like, it's just a no for me, dog. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't care, unfortunately. And I do find myself, and I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago in one of my clips, I do find myself kind of irritated with the constant literary references that Borges is making. And I love a good literary reference, don't get me wrong. It makes me feel smart, you know? And it makes me feel like this magical, overwhelming feeling of the connectedness of humans and literature and history and time and whatnot. I like that. But it feels to me that Borges is doing it so much to the point where he's not even writing anything new, which again kind of goes back to my comment that there is nothing new under the sun. So maybe he just is creating art so fully honed into that concept and he's aware of it. So maybe that's what he's doing. But to me, it just feels like he's not writing anything of his own. He's just constantly name dropping all of these authors and these books that he's read, and it makes him sound fancy and smart, and it feels really pretentious to me, if I'm being honest. And it's just not doing anything for me. So anyways, I stopped with the Aleph, and then I went to the Library of Babel, which was fine, I guess. It was fine. It was interesting. It gave me so much Piranesi vibes, which I'm sure was inspired so strongly by the Library of Babel. Like, it had to have been. Like, there's just no way that it wasn't, like, almost exactly trying to write, like, an homage to Borges, which I wonder if I heard that at the time, but I don't know. I read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, like, 7 years ago. When did it come out? I don't know. Yeah, I did not like Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. It didn't do anything for me. You know, it's just not speaking the same language of my heart and mind and soul. So it's just not my art. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not like art for me. It doesn't reflect the world and my feelings back to me and enlighten anything or elucidate anything about my life or myself to myself. So it just feels like a waste of my personal time to continue with it, but I'm glad I gave this a chance, really with these. And I did find a couple, I think I mentioned, that I did like, not enough to, like, again, I know for a fact, because I've read a lot of great stuff that really speaks to me. There are other things out there that will speak to me and be for me and help reflect life back to me the way that I need to see it, want to see it, am able to see it, you know? So, again, Borges just isn't for me, and I tried. I'm glad that I did, and who knows, I might come back one day and really love these, and that would be really interesting. So I'm not closing the door on it. I'm just saying I'm just recognizing that it's not a valuable way for me to spend my time now. So, and that's, you know, all it's part of the process. That's what it's all about, people. That's what it's all about. Yeah, so that therein ends my little short story reading project. So we started with Turgenev, which I really loved. I'm really, really, really looking forward to going back and reading more of Turgenev's stories. I really want to reread his novella that I read a few years ago, First Love. I'm really drawn to that. This was just beautiful writing. I only grabbed one book to represent Anton Chekhov because, bro, Anton Chekhov. Now, this is an example of someone whose art reflects my version of the world back to me and enlightens it in some way and like highlights it and makes it more, you know, and enriches it. Oh, God. I'm so happy I read Chekhov. Oh my God. Then we moved into Guy de Maupassant, which was just fun, like entertaining and fun. Really just good, solid, entertaining stories. Then we moved into Ernest Hemingway, which I do really love Hemingway. I really admire him and his writing style. I really admire his writing style. His stories are very simple, or they seem like they're very deceptively simple, but very powerful. So anyways, glad I finally read some of his short stories because I read a few of his novels. And then we moved into... we moved into Flannery O'Connor, which is god tier, right up with Chekhov. Holy shit. Oh, freaking love Flannery O'Connor. There you go. There you go. And then we did Vladimir Nabokov, which after reading one of his stories, which was The Vane Sisters, again to recap, not really inspiring me to go read any more of his works. And then we had Nikolai Gogol. We had Nikolai Gogol, which actually reminds me of a short story that I didn't even mention to you at all, that I read on my phone because I looked it up. Like I wasn't going to buy anything for it. It was Tommaso Landolfi's Gogol's Wife. Yeah, okay, so Bloom, I forgot about that. Bloom did do a section on Tommaso Landolfi's Gogol's Wife, which was a very satirical story of this author totally making fun of Gogol. Basically, like, he had Gogol in the story, in this guy's story, had a wife that was a balloon, you know, like one of those dolls that people do stuff with. And that I don't want to say explicitly what it is on the internet, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. And it's about the it's just like that, and the situation devolves, and it's very absurd, and it's like ridiculous, but funny. Like, it was funny. So I did read that, and I read 3 stories by Gogol, which I really liked. I really liked these stories. Also very absurd, pretty freaking sad, The Overcoat. And of course we did Calvino, Invisible Cities, which was a nice experience, didn't change my life. And we just talked about Borges. So overall, really happy with authors that I've discovered in this video. Such a fun reading project, just getting like a taste test of so many different authors and like authorial styles. So yeah, I invite you all, if you're interested, to join in this little reading project as well. If you want to read these short stories, or just if you have any writer that you enjoy their criticisms on and you appreciate their opinions of books, or you think you might, maybe pick up one of their books or read some of their things online, or listen to some of their interviews, maybe published on YouTube, and try reading through everything that they mention, because it's really interesting to hold up your own views and opinions with theirs, and just to see what's out there, you know what I mean? So yeah, have you guys read any of these authors? I should ask too. What are your thoughts and feelings? Who do you love of this group of authors? Who do you dislike? Who speaks to you? Who doesn't? And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.